not many places to go where you can get your art, Jewish art appraised, and they'll let you know exactly how much that art in your Bubby's house is worth. I'm going to tell you why I know about this stuff, how I got into it, and that's exciting. Let's try that again. There we go. Okay, that looks like it's on. We're live on Facebook. We're live on YouTube. That's exciting, and we are live on Zoom. And as soon as people come on, if people do come on, we're going to be able to tell people about Jewish art and Jewish artists, and is there such a thing as a Jewish painting worth millions of dollars? Why are there no artists, Jewish artists, in the 1700s or 1600s? Like, when did Jewish art start? It's an interesting thing. We're going to be speaking about that, where you can't find Jewish artists from the 1700s or 1600s. It's really a new phenomenon. So we're excited. We'll say hello to people while we load up. So we'll say hi to Judy. We're excited that you're here. And let's just make sure. That people can get on. Right. Hey, how you doing, Graham? Aryeh Wall. It looks like we're gonna have a chavrusa together, like a Jewish learning partnership together. It's gonna be exciting. Okay, let's see what we have over here. Okay, so for our Facebook people, so this is Jewish art, and again, if you want to see like the examples that I'm going to be bringing, so I'm going to be pulling that up on Zoom. Even if you don't have Zoom, it'll also be interesting. It'll be very informative, and if you do, then you may enjoy it a little bit more, even perhaps, because you'll be able to see some of the art that will be highlighted here. Okay, let's see. We have Olivia. Hi, Olivia. Welcome. Nice to see you here. We have Isabel Bouvier. We have Paul. Hi, Isabel. Oh, wow. Olivia and Isabel, is this your first time in one of my classes? Yeah, you like art? Okay, I'm really excited to do this. If someone had educated me, I wouldn't have blown so much money early on. Hey, David is here. Let's say hello. Welcome.
I just got off another Zoom. It was so I'm sorry I'm a few seconds late.
No. This is like Jewish time.
That's perfect.
Jewish time. We're always going to be a few seconds late. That's cool. We're also on Facebook and we're also on YouTube.
Oh, that's nice.
Exciting. We'll say hello to my Facebook people. While you say, if you're on Facebook watching, you want to say hello, and I can see you, I'll say hello back. And if you want to be able to see the examples, it'll be worthwhile to sign up. I'm going to just lift this a little bit. Okay, lift the computer just a little bit, I think. That's gonna work. Okay, well, I got all the artists coming on.
Well, that's great.
Okay, let's just make sure I didn't block Zoom. I think we'll be okay here. Oh. Like that. Oh. Okay, now it's going to be too high. It's going to block my Facebook friends. So we'll just keep it like this. This will be okay. Okay, we'll say hello to Nicole. Hi, Nicole. Anyone If you could show face, I love warm, smiling faces. And even if they happen to be platypuses, Isabella, Isabel, and Rachel, and Blair. Okay. Oh, there we go. Welcome. Welcome, Blair. It's great to see you. And I'm eating dinner. Okay, no problem. Ain't by, yeah, no problem. Okay. So I think we're going to begin now. We're already live on a few different venues. We'll say hi to Julie Rappaport. We'll say hello. And we are ready to begin. So I think this is somewhat unique to have a class on Jewish art, maybe even from a rabbi. We're not really expected to know about these artist things. I'm not sure why, because some of the greatest rabbis were also artists. We're going to be speaking about that over the next 4 weeks. But I'm going to start off with my story. Why art? How did all that evolve? And I'll just give you my journey very quickly, and you'll understand where my passion is coming from. So I used to be a rabbi in UCLA. That's in California for all of you. UCLA, Los Angeles. And we'd have students over for Shabbat, and they would come to visit and eat supper by us, and it was wonderful. And one day I had a student, and we had the best time. It was just really, really enjoyable. And as he left, he said, "Rabbi, the dinner was great. I really enjoyed myself. But I have one question." I said, "What's that? What's the question?" He says, "Are Orthodox people against art?" I said, "No, why would you think we're against art?" He goes, "Well, I'm at your house, and I've been to other rabbis' houses, and your walls are empty. Like, I figured maybe there's something about art that is forbidden." So really what I wanted to tell him at that point was, no, we just have better things to spend our money on. That's really what I wanted to say. Like, we're not spending all the money on art, but it resonated with me. And I figured if he's mentioning it, then maybe it's something to think about. Maybe that's something that could be compelling for my students when they came in, and maybe it's a nice thing. So I have a confession to make, and if you're one of these people, click the little reactions button. I enjoy thrift stores and antiquing. There's a little reaction button. I just like to know that I'm not the only weirdo. My kids used to get very upset at me. Ah, there we go. Thank you, Isabel. Even during supper, and Madeline as well, right? If we go to Connecticut, that's for the upper class thrifters. They called it antiquing, but it's really just thrift shopping. Anyhow, next time I was there, I bought I saw, it was like a Jewish thrift store, and I saw a lithograph that was Jewish. I didn't love it. It was art, and I didn't have art, and I thought, this will be nice. So I bought it. It wasn't expensive. I don't know, 10, 15 bucks or something like that. The name just slipped my mind. It'll come back. It was a nice Israeli artist. And then I said, okay, I got to get it framed. That's when I was in for sticker shock, because even though I paid like 15 bucks for the lithograph, it was like 350 bucks to frame it. Like, wow, Olivia, you know what I'm talking about, right? Framing it's crazy. So, okay, but it was nice, and they said, got to put a matting, and then a matting in the matting with a little gold, and okay. And I showcased it. It's like really nice. Probably at that point, I caught the bug at that point. And every time I went to thrift stores, I went specifically to Jewish thrift stores, and I would look for art, lithographs, not like paintings, but lithographs. And after a while, I ended up finding enough to fill up my dining room, which is where I had all my events at. And it was nice. It was colorful. And one day, a great rabbi came to my house, and his name was Rabbi Reich, Rabbi Naftali Reich. I remember clearly, and he was a rabbi in Monsey. I happen to live in Monsey now, but I didn't know I would then. I was an LA guy at that time, and he's looking at my wall, and he says, "Do you mind if I tell you something?" I said, "No, go for it." He said, I see you're collecting these lithographs. I have a piece of advice for you. He said, when I was young, I used to collect old Sfarim, old Jewish books from the 1800s, 1700s, even 1600s. And he said, and I was advised, and it was great advice that I got, was not to invest in art from the 1600s or 1700s, where the paper is actually made of wood, but rather to invest in manuscripts that were from the 1400s, late 1400s and earlier. And the reason why is because in those days, they didn't make art out of pulp, out of wood pulp. They made it out of rags. And it's called incabula. And incabula lasts. That's why you could have very beautiful manuscripts or even Torah books that exist from the 1400s, 1200s, and yet from the 1600s, they crumble in your fingers. He said, and I was told better to buy one incabula than 5 later pieces of not pieces of later books. One better than 5. So he says, I'm going to tell you the same thing. Better to buy one actual painting than 5 lithographs. Because he said at the end of the day, a lithograph is a glorified photocopy. Okay, there are different ways they make it, different color schemes. Some of them are etchings and they're wood blocks. I learned a lot about that later on. But he said, if you want to create value for yourself, better get one actual painting. And I took what he said to heart. History, by the way, has proven him absolutely correct. In the past 10, 15, 20 years, lithographs have plummeted. They're worth very, very little, unless you happen to have a Dali with signed and certified, then it could be worth a few thousand, or a Chagall. But even that, because there's really no limit, even though they made an artificial limit to lithographs, 1 out of 20, 1 out of, or 1 out of 300, or 7 out of whatever the number happens to be. But you want something that art is touched. It's a very intimate idea. Anyways, so I began buying actual art, and from there, I educated myself in art. And in the beginning, I just really put anything that was original up on the wall, and I began haunting eBay a little bit and checking it out. And one of the nice things was, and I'm wrapping up my story because this is not my story, but this I think will help you understand where I'm coming from over the next 4 weeks. Over time, after educating myself who the artists were, first I learned about Jewish artists, and then I realized to understand Jewish art, you just have to understand actual art. So I told myself who Monet was, and Manet, and Seurat, or with the Modigliani, even though sort of Jewish, right? And I taught myself what actual art, and I appreciated it. And then at a certain point, if I ever needed cash, I actually even knew how to sell my piece. I could buy and sell on eBay just like any person. And one of the things I discovered, and this is before everyone had internet on their phone. So this is my UCLA days. So this is really going back, 15 years or so. I had I think it was a BlackBerry at that time. And there was a very, very crude, incredibly slow internet, but I did sign up for one of these sites where you could look up the value of the art at auction. And I started going to flea markets on Sunday. I really work for a living, but Sunday morning, after davening, that was my thing. I'd go to davening, and then I'd go to LA has some glorious flea markets. They're so much fun. I could just walk there for hours, and I would speak to students on the phone. It was a good time. The weather was always beautiful. And in those days, I was able to go to flea markets, look up the prices that were being sold, that things fetched in auction, and it was not difficult to find a piece in the flea market for 15, 20 bucks and sell it for $1,000 on eBay, because that's really what its price was. There were just people blowing out, stuff from their house, or you're just recycling grandpa stuff or whatever. And then it was really very helpful. Fast forward to today. Today I live in Muncie, and I found art to be an incredibly compelling way of making a statement about what I represent to my students. Now, we have over here Vlad. Vlad, we got Vlad. We know Vlad. Vlad is a famous physicist, and Vlad has been to my house a number of times. Um, uh, Vlad, can I ask you? I know you're a man of few words. When you walk into a house that is full of Jewish art, what does that do for you? You mind unmuting? Oh, you're in the office. You have to type. Okay, you can type it. I'll read. Well, you don't have to. It's just thumbs up. Does it make a difference? You're so sweet. Okay, yeah. So, we had pictures of the four sons from the Haggadah, and accepting the Torah at Mount Sinai, and so on and so forth. It was just amazing to have that when you come into the house. It makes a statement, and it's amazing conversation starter. Like, wow, Rabbi, did the splitting of the sea really happen? And I had this glorious painting of the splitting of the sea, and it was just like launch into a conversation. So that was that. So that is a little bit about my story, how I got into it, and I very, very much appreciate art. It's not my life. I got to tell you that I've met people who are involved with art and they get consumed by it. It can consume you. It really, truly, absolutely can. Like any hobby, the thing is, it really is a rich man's hobby, and I'm not a rich man, so I'm a bargain hunter. That's my richness. If I find a nice bargain, that's what I'm looking for. But it's not my life. I have music in my life. I have children. I'm married happily, thank God, and I'm a rabbi, and I like to teach the Torah. But it's part of my life, and I wouldn't say it's insignificant. It's something that was important to me. Now, by raise of hands over here, I know we have a number of people here on Zoom. We also have a number of people who are watching on Facebook, and we have a number of people watching on YouTube. So I have a question, and of course, only the people here are going to be able to answer. But maybe you could answer me. How many people here are artists? Okay, if you're an artist, right, or a wannabe artist, can you do the little? You could either raise your hand. Okay, Casey, you're an artist. Amazing. Nicole, an artist. You're an artist. Oh wow. Okay, can we take a moment and just share what kind of art? Are you comfortable doing that? Arya, you want to tell us what kind of art you do?
Picked it up kind of as a hobby, but primarily like little canvas paintings.
Okay.
Bluetooth disconnected.
My Bluetooth is disconnected, by the way. I'll just turn this guy off. You can hear me still, though, right? Okay, great. Okay, and what medium do you paint in, Arya?
Acrylic, typically.
Which one? I didn't hear that.
Acrylic.
Almost. Oh. Acrylic. Okay, great. Casey, what about you? Can you share what kind of art you produce?
Yeah, I do oil painting.
Very nice. How many years?
Over 10, I guess.
No kidding. Well, over the next 4 weeks, I would like to give you an opportunity to showcase what you've created, because we're very excited for the creativity and the love that you put in. So if you have any pieces over the next 4 weeks, or even right now, if you'd like to show us who we're speaking with, then don't be shy, okay? And Nicole, what about you? Are you comfortable sharing what kind of art you make?
Hi.
Hi, Nicole.
I do a bit of printmaking, acrylics, jewelry, and jewelry making.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's really awesome. You know, a lot of the artists, an artist can't sit still. Meaning, if you're going to be an artist, you have to always be creative. Otherwise, you stagnate. So a lot of the artists went from art, from painting, oils to watercolor to acrylic. They would do printmaking, they do wood blocking, then they'd move into sculpture, then they move into all sorts of things. And that's just how different ways that we express ourselves. It's interesting. One of the artists that I collect, his name is Chaim Gross, and he happens to be a major, major artist. He's in all the, by the way, there's a lot of very Jewish sounding artists that are in MoMA and the Met and Smithsonian. It's really interesting. And Chaim Gross is one of them. You're welcome, by the way, to Google any of this stuff. You may find it interesting. And Chaim Gross's sculptures are very expensive. You know, you're talking about 70, 80,000 bucks. And his watercolors you can get for $200. So it's really interesting that exists, that you're so proficient in one kind of art, and yet another kind of art is just not, people haven't yet connected to it. And there's a lot of examples of that. Okay, so we started speaking about why art. So reason number one is because it is a way for you to express what's going on inside. You know, people take it very seriously what they put on their lock screen of their phone. Like, this is who I am. Now you're probably curious, like, actually I can't show you because it's on Facebook, it's recording me, but I've got my granddaughter because that's what I want to see every time I open my phone. I want to remind myself, calm down. It's okay. You know, there's innocence, till you're 1 year old. And that's very meaningful to me. But it's a chance to express ourselves. And we do this in a multitude of ways. The way we design our bedroom is an expression of ourselves, or our desk. Are we modern? Are we classic? Are we neoclassic? Do we like the oranges of the 1970s, Partridge Family style, or Brady Bunch? Like, well, do we like the shaggy carpets? Like, what is us? And we want to really be proud of ourselves and put it out there. We also said that art is a way of inspiring us. Now, I'm going to give a third idea, and this is a Jewish idea, and then we're going to get more into the history. Jewish idea behind art. There is a pasuk. The pasuk is a verse, and the verse says, Ze keli ve'anveyu. Ze keli, this is my God, and I will glorify him. And we actually read this last week in the Torah portion. Last week was the Torah portion of the splitting of the sea. And when the Jews walked through on dry land and the sea crashed upon the Egyptians, the Jewish people broke out into a song of thanks. That's called Shiras Hayam, the song by the sea, called Az Yashir. And that song has in it the words, Zek Keli Vandeyo. This is my God, and I'm going to glorify him. And the rabbis learn out from those words, this is my God, and I will glorify him, that whenever possible, we should try to decorate, to make a little more ornate the mitzvot that we do. So don't make kiddush on a plastic cup. Go get something nice. You may want to get a silver cup. That's a very popular. Get a nice silver. There's even a Yiddish word for it called becher. Get a nice Yiddish becher, a Jewish becher. Right? That's what it is. Personally, I think the silver hurts the wine a little bit. So I moved over from silver to crystal, which still has that really pretty look. And it doesn't. It's not bad for the wine. It actually has little microscopic imperfections in the crystal, which allows the wine to aerate. So that's just why people use crystal. However, if you have children, it'll probably break pretty often. So I'm always replacing them. Zekil Vandeyu, you have a synagogue. Make it nice. Don't just use a room. Make it nice. Get a nice chandelier. And in the in Europe, you don't see this so much in America, but in Europe, genuine artists would come and they would paint the walls of the synagogue. If anyone, and has anyone here ever been to Poland, to one of these older synagogues? Never been? Madeline, I have to take you, okay? We're going to go. I go to Poland at least once a year. You'll come with me, okay? We'll have a 7 days of cold inspiration. So you look at the synagogues, and some of them are jaw-droppingly stunning. I see either my father or mother are on. I'm not sure. I see their name. They can. I know their face is not here, but hi, Dad. Hi, Mom. So if they're there, I know that they went to Poland. At least my dad did. If you go to some of the old synagogues, some of them have so much work. Like, I don't want to say, but like the Sistine Chapel has got nothing on some of these synagogues. They're really that gorgeous. And that's, I mean, it's not Michelangelo, let's be honest, but they're really, really beautiful. They're gorgeous. So that's the law. The law is Zeh Keli V'Anvehu. This is my God, and I will glorify him. And the way that we glorify Hashem is by making the mitzvos artistic. Now, if you go all the way back to when the Jewish people left Egypt, they were commanded to build a tabernacle. It was like before the temple, it was a tabernacle. You could Google this. I don't have a picture over here. I could Google it, but I don't want to spend that time right now. But you could look up the tabernacle. It was a stunning edifice. And the artist who was in charge of making sure, he was charged with making sure that the different vessels in the temple were gorgeous, was a young man. It was really more of a boy than a man. He was in his early teens, and his name was Bezalel. And he just, the Torah says he had an artistic eye. He understood how to find the artistry of God within holy vessels. And he, not Moses, he was commanded to make the different vessels in the tabernacle. And he's such a well-known figure. We're going to be speaking about this over the next 4 weeks. But the Israeli art school, or the Israeli art movement, as it were, was named Bezalel after, you ever see Bezalel art? It says Bezalel, you look it up. Bezalel art is Bezalel art, named after this person who came out of Egypt, and he made that artistry. Okay, so let's ask a few interesting questions. So we're going to cover at least 2 important points right now. One point we're going to cover is, why is there no Jewish art before 1850? There isn't. There's no Jewish art. There are Jewish images painted by non-Jews, but there is not Jewish art. And then the second question is, what is Jewish art? And there's a lot of answers to that. What makes something Jewish? And there are different categories. Now, I am determined to make this not a dry session. I want you to learn a lot, but I also want to keep it interesting. Okay, so God willing, I'm going to be able to do that, and we're going to start with the question of why there's no Jewish art from before 1850. The first Jewish artist in the modern era was a man by the name of Moritz Oppenheim. Moritz Oppenheim. And you can find this stuff in the Jewish Museum. Moritz Daniel Oppenheim. And he was what's called the first Jewish artist. And he was somebody who was very unique. I'm going to show you exactly why. I just have to get the correct picture here. Okay. He was a very unique man. Before the 1850s, there was no such thing as Jewish art, because in order to be an artist, you had to belong to a guild. And Jews were not allowed in guilds. They weren't allowed in guilds. As a matter of fact, a lot of the canards that Jewish people have been blamed with, accused of, stereotyped as, were actually created by the non-Jewish world. For example, moneylenders. The Jews were known as moneylenders. And this was something that was highlighted in Shakespeare's work, The Merchant of Venice, Shylock. The Jew, the evil moneylender, except that the Jews were forced to be moneylenders because they weren't allowed to be other things. And the opposite, the Christians wanted Jews to be moneylenders because the Christians weren't able to lend with interest. And therefore, they would have to borrow from somebody, so they borrowed from Jews. Tax collectors. No one wants to be a tax collector. I don't know if the guys in the IRS like to be tax collectors. No one likes you. It's like being a meter maid on steroids, right? So who's the tax? Why would, so the Jewish people ended up being the tax collectors. So the poor Jew had to go to Ivan and say, give your tax. And Ivan wasn't happy. He didn't realize the Jew's not keeping the tax. He's giving it to the government. So the Russians would send the Jew to collect from the other Russian. And who's Ivan going to hate? Ivan's going to hate the Jew who demanded the taxes. It was just not a great situation. But Jews were not allowed to be artists. They couldn't belong to guilds, so they couldn't be artists. Now, the second reason that Jews weren't artists was because there was a prohibition not to create graven images. And what those graven images were, there's a great dispute. There was a great dispute in what makes something a graven image. Is it a painting? Is it a 3D? And for many years, Jewish people, they just didn't want to have anything to do with it. They just said, let's keep the art for the synagogue. Let's keep the art for the mitzvah. We'll do mitzvahs with art. And most of their art was mitzvah driven. So you didn't have actual paintings by Jews. Now, Rembrandt did paint some Jewish paintings. He painted a Jewish bride. He painted a few rabbis. I actually had an etching and something called an after painting of Rembrandt. After means we didn't know if it was. I got it on the cheap, so it probably wasn't. But it was a really, really old painting of a rabbi done in a Rembrandtish style, and it, there are different terms for it, which are each a little bit different. Either it's called after Rembrandt, which we're not sure if it's Rembrandt, or it's called the School of Rembrandt, which means that it may have been one of his students, because a lot of these artists, they didn't, when they became very famous, they didn't have time to paint for all of their patrons. So what they used to do is they used to teach art. And then what they would do is they would have their students paint for them in their style. And sometimes they would put on the finishing touches of the art. And sometimes the student painted the entire piece. Somebody who was very guilty of this was Leonardo da Vinci, who there's a lot of paintings out there where we don't know if they're Leonardo's or one of his students. And Rembrandt was guilty of the same. And it's not guilty. That's just, that was the business in those days. When you write to the president and it says Biden, don't think Biden signed it. That's called autopen. That's how that works. They don't have time. So Rembrandt's not painting for everyone who throws cash at him. It takes a while to paint. Are you waiting for me? Okay. You could listen. What? You're okay. So you didn't have artists until the 1850s. They couldn't belong to guilds. It also wasn't viewed as a job for a good Jewish boy. Like, you're going to paint? Like, how are you going to make a parnasa from painting? Parnasa means a living. How are you going to make parnasa from painting? They still say that today. How are you going to do it? And usually that's true. That's where, right? Aryeh, it's where the starving artists come from. That's why he said you do it as a hobby. Because someone who says, Dad, I'm going off to seek my fortune. What do? I do caricatures. Good luck. Good luck. You'll be working in the circus, It's very, very tough. So for those reasons and more, we don't have Jewish artists. Along comes Moritz Oppenheim. So we'll go back a little bit. We have Napoleon. And Napoleon speaks about liberté, right? Fraternité, right? He speaks about this enlightenment, this opening up of the of commerce and opportunities for everyone, and that included Jews. And after, can this one please? And after a while, Jews it began to dawn on them like we could actually be artists. And that first artist was Moritz Oppenheim. And his medium, his paintings were usually quite small. My grandfather, my great-grandfather was a very famous art collector, and he owned a number of the original Moritz Oppenheims. I don't even want to know where they are today. Like, were they stolen? He lived in Germany, so we have sort of an idea. Were they stolen? Who knows where they are? Were they donated? Were they sold? We don't know. But Moritz Oppenheim lived in that period of enlightenment, and enlightenment very often meant that Jewish people felt like they had to sacrifice their Judaism for their craft. And this became a major issue in the art world from then until today. And this is something I'd like to cover as well, very important. It was felt that once I want to get out there in the world, I want people to know that I exist. If I'm an artist, so how did artists become famous before Facebook and Instagram? How did you become famous? How did people know about you? So the answer is you were invited to something called salons. And these salons were in Vienna, they were in Paris. These artist salons would invite artists to showcase their work. And they were the ones who dictated the style of the day. And if you didn't get your art in the salon, no one heard about you. Now, in case you're wondering, Vincent van Gogh. So he did get one piece in a salon. He tried to showcase his stuff. He was really not accepted. And if they didn't accept you in the salon, then you weren't worth a whole bunch, were you? So Moritz Oppenheim actually was accepted. He even painted for the emperor. And I'm going to share a screen. I'm going to show you one of his paintings. And this painting is noted for its struggle. Let's see, okay. This is not it. Sorry about that. I'm going to stop the share from that is a Moritz Oppenheim, but it's not the one I wanted to showcase for you. The one I want to showcase for you is this guy. And unfortunately, it's a little bit cut off the picture, but you could see it enough to appreciate it, I think. Okay, now this painting, could you guys all see that painting? Okay, now this painting has a very long title. I don't remember the title. It's like, who titles paintings like this? The title of the painting is something like, don't quote me verbatim, you can look it up. A soldier comes home. A soldier comes home from war as greeted by his family on the Shabbat evening. Like one of these like ridiculous titles. But the painting itself has a story to it. And the story is the struggle of the Jewish people in the 1850s. So could you guys see my little pointer when I point? Could you guys see that? Okay. So here's what's going on in this painting. Here's a soldier. Now this soldier came home on Friday night. He came home and he was in the German army. Moritz Oppenheim, Daniel Bohm was German. And he just came back from the army, and he is greeted differently by many people. So here's the father. Now the father is annoyed. He loves his son, but he's annoyed for two reasons. Number one, you see they're in the middle of the meal, or maybe they had just made Kiddush. They're in the middle of the meal, and he's in the middle of singing Shabbat Zmirot, Shabbat songs. And that doesn't bother him so much. But what does bother him is you look outside, it's night. And how did he get here? Did he come back? So traveling on Shabbat, it's questionable. And then you can't see it over here unless I blow it up. Oh, I think you could see. Can you guys see that? Can you guys see this little thing here? Okay. What does he have over here? Can anyone tell me? You can unmute yourself. You guys see what that is? That's a cross.
The Jerusalem cross.
Right. So it's not a regular cross.
Jerusalem one.
The Jerusalem cross, right? It's
Yeah.
not a regular cross because the bottom half doesn't poke down further. It's black, and he was awarded it, but it's a cross nonetheless. And the father's looking at it, and the father is none too pleased with it. Okay, let's go back. So the father is annoyed. The mother, she's kvelling. You know the Yiddish word kvelling? Like, oh, here's my son. He came back from war, and she's looking at him sweetly, like, at least he's safe. Let's not quibble about that stuff. At least he's safe. Here's the older sister. Now, the older sister adores her brother. And she's like, oh, my older brother, I look up to him. And she's like she's adoring him. Now here, there's 3 more kids. 2 of the other kids, they're young and they're curious and they admire this older brother. And of course, here's the last guy, last brother. Here's a sword. And what is he interested in, like many kids are? He's interested in the sword. Yeah. Wow, that's a mean sword he's got there. So this is an amazing painting. It's small. The detail is astonishing. The painting is a little bit warped, I believe, in this. It's like condensed. It should be, it's made like the old videos instead of the new, the 1080, going out. But you could see, for example, here is the menorah. There's a menorah. There's another menorah on a hook. This is the candle. This is the candelabra in those days. These all had oil and wicks. And this is the samovar. Samovar, that's where they put the hot water. Or this could also be where they washed their hands for motzi. When they washed their hands, let's all go wash our hands. That's probably where they did that. So that was Moritz Oppenheim. Really, a person who tried to show the struggles of the Jewish people, but also with tremendous dignity. And he idealized what Jewish life was like in those days. And he tried to just give those images. I'm going to give you one more image. I adore Moritz Oppenheim. I think his stuff is beautiful. Give you one more image so we can appreciate him. And this is another Shabbat scene. Now this is during the day, and here is Dad after a big heavy cholent, and he's maxed. Cholent. It's like the Jewish ambient, like bam, knocks him out. And here's a child, and child's reading to the father, but the father's like sort of drifting off. In Yiddish, we call that dremeling. And here we've got 2 sisters, and they may be saying Tehillim. And here's the son, and he's studying Talmud. And it's a very idyllic scene, a very pleasant scene, maybe at 2 o'clock, 1:30, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. The father, of course, has his dad chair. And it's just wonderful. And he became well known for those scenes, and they've been printed and reprinted. And in a certain way, they're very timeless. Now, we're going to fast forward. We're not going to go through all the artists now. We're going to do that, God willing, next week. But beginning with Moritz Oppenheim, Jewish people began getting their feet wet in art. But what happened was something very astonishing. And this is, I think, going to help us understand for the next classes. Art evolves, right? All of you, those of you who enjoy art, you could look at a Dali, and that could be surrealism. There's Dadaism. There's abstract. There's the Jackson Pollock stuff that you may or may not like. There's really classical art. There's impressionistic art. There's just so much out there. And these school of arts, they evolved gradually over time, over many, many hundreds of years. Now, Jewish people, since we began art, our own journey as artists in the 1850s, we began being determined to catch up to the world. And because of that, instead of having hundreds of years for art to evolve, the Jewish people put the record player on fast forward, the old fashioned records where it would sound like Alvin and the Chipmunks, like really quick. That was Jewish art. So you had 20 years of classical art, and then we were done with it. And we moved on to Impressionism, and then we were done with it. And then we moved on to different kinds of art, neo-surrealism, real surrealism, abstract. We simply went from one school to the next. So we caught up and actually began leading the pack in a mere 150 years. So that itself is fascinating. The very fact that we try to check every box, but we only have 150 years to do it. So the School of Jewish Art is 20 years long instead of many, many hundreds of years. Now, that created a very interesting phenomena. Number one, there's relatively little art from each school from those days. There's relatively little. Now, what do I mean what numbers are we talking about? So there is a term in art called a listed artist. That means an art. There are different art catalogs, Davenport, art. There are different catalogs where you can look up how much art is worth. Today, it's all online. In my days before online, you used to have to buy a big, heavy book, and that was called a Davenport, big, fat book. Very, very expensive also. And using a Davenport, you knew how much art was worth. How many artists are listed? So in the Davenport, you'll find about 400,000 listed artists. That's a lot of artists. So people come to me, Rabbi, you know art. What do you say about blah, blah, blah? I said, dude, there's 400,000 artists. I do not know every artist in the Davenport, right? I know my niche, There's a lot of artists out there. If you juxtapose that to the Jewish schools, Jewish artists, like significant Jewish artists, all in all, and I'm not going to say in totality, but you're probably talking about less than 500. Probably less than 500, and genuinely significant artists, like historically significant, probably under 200. So there's far less Jewish art out there, and there's far less of each school of Jewish art. There's just far less Jewish art of each school, and that really makes investing a very good idea. And we're going to speak about that in the last class, how to invest. But it also created something really interesting. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you this. I'm going to stop for questions for a moment, but I'm going to tell you what the effect of that was. Since Jewish art only had 20 years to evolve to the next school, and since there was such a dearth of actual Jewish art that of each school that existed. So let's say I want classic art, classic Jewish art. I want it to be like Rembrandt is. I want it to be realism. I want to see the shadows on the faces. I want to see I really like a Moritz Oppenheim. I want it to be like Isidor Kaufman, Laser Creston. I want it to be just beautiful, classic. Right? So you couldn't afford it because that art stopped being made in large part by the turn of the last century. What happened was, and here's the punchline, a few years ago, and by a few years ago, we're not talking about more than 20 years, 25 years, probably not more than that. The rebound effect had artists saying, you know what, there's not enough classic art. I'm going to start painting in the classical way once again. And that kind of art, that classic art, that beautiful art, a whole new school of artists began painting that style, but not just classic art. Today's Jewish artists do not belong to one school. Nay, today's Jewish artists belong to every school under the sun, from the most abstract to the most real to the most surreal. There was such a dearth of Jewish art out there that today, if you're an artist, a Jewish artist, and you want to produce Jewish paintings, there's something for you out there. There's a market out there for everything. So that was the rebound effect of only having 20 years from each school. Is today there's just a lot of artists painting every style, and you can get, once again, stuff that Moritz Oppenheim made, not the same. Like, these are original thinkers, original artists, but they don't say on them, 1871. They'll say 2005. And for somebody who can't afford some of Moritz Oppenheim, which not that many people can, they can have a real significant piece of art that is painted up to very high standards from today's artists. And by the way, that's one of the kinds of arts that I collect. Not just that, but I very much enjoy the classical art. Let's take a moment and we'll take some questions over here, and then we'll go on to the next thing. Anyone have any questions? You guys are such a great audience. Yeah, Blair.
Hi. I was wondering, you said that it was effectively inappropriate for Jewish artists to create art, but was it or was it not appropriate by the same standards when the Rothschilds were funding art during the Renaissance? Like, why was they were following the moneylender, I guess, rules, but they were at the same time funding, for lack of on the assumption of Goyish art. So where does the halachic law fall on that one?
Yeah, so that's a great question. That's a great question. It sounds like the Rothschilds play by their own rules because they got the bucks, right?
No comment.
Yeah, but it doesn't have to be that way. The truth of the matter is, it's not really expressly forbidden, because if it would be, we still couldn't do it today. It was more of a sentiment. And there is such a thing in Judaism where there were certain sentiments about certain things that did change over time. And that had to do with clothing as well. Clothing is the same, where there was a Jewish garb, and otherwise you would look like a cosmopolitan German. If you were just a regular suit, you would have to wear the long frock. But after a while, that changed as well. It was not real, what we call halacha. And this as well, there are still things such as sculptures that are problematic. Like a sculpture of a person that's realistic looking could actually be significantly a problem. If it's not so realistic, it's not such a problem. So the Rothschilds were able to afford it, and they did it. But I'm not going to say it was really expressly forbidden. Otherwise, we wouldn't do it today.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Blair. Any other questions? No?
Oh, Rabbi, let me ask you a question. First of all,
Sure.
Thank you for this wonderful program.
Thank you.
I've learned a lot, and I imagine everyone else has too. When you're going back to Moritz Oppenheim,
Yeah.
and of course we know over time some of the works have not remained with the families that should have them. And I know this is just a very focused question, but how many pieces of his art would be out in the world today? I mean, is that something that they're able to document what's out there, or?
I believe it is documented, like especially an artist that's significant. We technically should know where all the pieces are. Like once in a while, like a new piece comes. I don't know if I had to guess. I never looked it up, so this is a guess.
Right.
Just based on the pieces that I've seen, and again, there may be sketches or like insignificant pieces, but like important pieces, I would for sure say under 50.
Okay. So even if he was very prolific, there's not a lot of his artwork
Correct.
that remains.
Correct. Maybe actually we can cover this. This is a very interesting angle. How prolific does an artist need to be in order to be investment worthy? Or if you're an artist, right? Where's Casey? You want to be an artist, or Nicole or Aryeh? You want to be an artist? How many pieces over a lifetime should you be making? And it's an interesting question. And here's what this question really is. If you make too few, then people are not going to know about you. And if they don't know about you, then your price is not going to go up. But if you make too many, then you're going to oversaturate the market. And again, your price is not going to go up. Of course, the greatest example of that was a fellow who passed away just a few years ago named Morris Katz, who was considered the fastest artist in the world, according to Guinness Book of World Records. He was able to make David, looks to me the way you're nodding like you've actually met the man.
No, but I find it interesting how you characterize him. So I imagine he produced quite a bit of artwork.
Very, very prolific, over 30,000 pieces. And it took him about a minute and a half to make. And actually, it became a show. They would bring, I saw him in one of his shows. He passed away, but I saw him in one of his shows. The hotels would bring him down, and it would be like you would hire a singer. So instead you hired an artist. He would like whip together a painting, and he had his way of doing it with the word is slipping my mind with the metal. Who's my artist over here? He was like a metal palette where he would like push the painting around, and he would make a very nice painting, and then he would sell it on the spot for $100 or so, or maybe $150, and it became a show, and he was guaranteed to sell pieces, so he was happy. I know a person who bought most of his collection, and I sort of scoffed at it because like he just oversaturated. The truth is his art actually has begun to go up, just because, I don't know, it's hard to say why. He was a good artist, but he didn't spend his time. Like if you look at his early pieces, he actually did know how to paint. You can look him up, Morris Katz. So you could oversaturate the market, in which case your stuff won't be worth all that much either. So how many paintings do you have to paint in order to have enough that you're investment worthy and you got your name out there, but you haven't oversaturated the market? So the answer is about, ready for this, about 2 paintings a month. That's what between 1 and 2 paintings. So you want to be able to produce between 12 and 24 paintings a year, which should come out in the life of an artist to about 600 pieces. That's sort of the sweet spot. You get 600 pieces out there, your name will get out there, and you have the ability to keep your prices up. Anyways, here I'm going to give you a little bit of a preview for next week, and we're going to ask the question, what makes art Jewish? Now, why is this important? So it's important for a few reasons. Number one, if you want the Jewish statement on your wall, then what makes art Jewish? That's the question. What is that Jewish imagery? Is it the signature of the person? What if he painted a still life of fruit? Right, a bowl of fruit, but it's a Jewish artist. Is that Jewish art? What if it's a non-Jew who painted a Jewish scene? What's Israeli art? Is Israeli art Jewish? What about American Jewish? What about Russian Jewish, which is its own category? So it's really interesting when we look at what exactly makes Jewish art. So number one, I want to show that Jewish imagery. But number two, because of the dynamic that I explained to you earlier, that Jewish art doesn't really exist out there because of the early Jewish art. So the Jewish art has turned out to be a relatively good investment, bang for the buck. And I used to help a lot of people invest their money in art. I said, I see this artist is going up. I'll give you one example. There was an artist by the name of Zvi Rafaeli, and he's an artist. I would call him second to third generation Israeli artist, although he lived in Florida and California and New York for different periods of time. He fought in the Irgun for the Israeli independence, and a number of years ago, his art was going for about $400 a piece. And I had my friends, I said, buy it. I'm telling you, it's going to go up. And today, each of those pieces are about $5,000. So 400 to 5,000, that's a pretty good. Now, it's not 5 million. I'm not a a profit, but I don't think it's ever going to be. But it'll go up to 10,000. It'll go up 10,000, maybe a little bit more. There are other artists, Jewish artists, even alive today, that whose paintings go for the hundreds of thousands. There's actually an old woman, an elderly woman who lives in Mea She'arim. She's ultra Orthodox. She's actually Taimani, Yemenite, and you can Google her, very fascinating artist. She's in her 90s, and her name is Huvy Elisha, Huvy Elisha. Elisha is her last name, Elisha. And she there's a video about her. You can see a video online. She's the most charming lady ever. Like she's just delicious. I think just so sweet and so full of love. And you could see that in her artwork. And her large pieces go for well over $100,000. And she's still alive, and she's still painting from her little apartment in Mea She'arim and in Jerusalem. So Jewish art has gone up. There was an artist who passed away recently named Isaac Holtz, who was celebrated Jewishly, and his stuff also $400. Today, they're going for $20,000, and they're going to keep going up. Some of them are even more than that. So for the Jewish imagery on the wall, for the investment, and maybe just for the love of it. Sometimes we could do things just for the love. And I tell my students and my friends, when they come to me, they say, what do you think about me buying this? Is this a good investment? I always say, don't buy anything you wouldn't hang, because no one can really predict what it's going to be worth. And you may be stuck just putting it on the wall. And if you enjoy it, that's not a bad thing. But if you don't enjoy it, then it's just going to gather dust. And both you didn't make money and didn't have enjoyment from it. So what is Jewish art? We're going to be speaking about that next week. Who are the American artists? What was their inspiration? The American Jewish artists, the 1940s and 50s. And I'll give you a hint. It was the unions, a very union-based art. Who are the artists? Who are the Russian artists that are dominating the market today? What about Israeli art? What makes art Israeli? And really one of my favorite subjects, although it's hard to speak about, is what is Holocaust art? And why is there a market for it? And what makes Holocaust art Holocaust? So there's a lot to say. It's going to be very interesting. And I'm really glad that you joined. I hope you found this informative. And if you did, tell your friends. Every class is going to be a standalone. And I'm hoping by the last class, if one day you decide to either invest in art or you want to become an artist and you want to understand the market and the passion behind it, that it will be helpful for you. I want to say this class is sponsored by Olami. They're not paying. I mean, they're not paying for this class, but I work for Olami, and I'm very excited. If you haven't heard about Olami, you could definitely check them out. I'm sure you saw their crash course. There's a lot of very, very good classes as part of this crash course. And next Wednesday, I will be on with a crash course music. And next Thursday, I hope to see you there. And if you found this interesting, informative, and plan on perhaps popping by next week, can you please give me a reaction here? So I'll know that that we're going to have, oh, yay, Olivia. Got Madeline. Yes. Aryeh, we're good. I'm putting you all on the spot, but that's okay. Reja, Lisa, and my folks. Okay. Very good. David, I know you'll be back. So if you're available. Okay. So I'm going to wish you all lots of love, and may the world be colorful for you. And may you project all those beautiful images, those starry nights. Just project them, and your days should be beautiful. I look forward to seeing you next week, and I wish you all Shabbat Shalom. Bye, everyone.